Okay, it's Friday. We've made it, sort of. Hopefully there won't be another 10:30 tornado tonight on Long Island. Joe Cioffi here, Fios 1 News, Long Island, and Fios 1 News, New Jersey.
And Joe Rayo, Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley. And Joe, when I got home last night, I was hearing off in the distance rumbles of thunder, which just got louder and louder. And then looking at the radar, I said, my goodness, here's a little, looked like a little piddling storm or shower cell that was just growing right before my very eyes. And that was the one that caused the National Weather Service to suddenly decide to put up a tornado warning of all places for Queens.
Yes, and by the way, what you described is probably the most dangerous time to be out in a thunderstorm, is when they're in the process of building.
Correct.
When they're in decay, not that it's that much safer, but relatively speaking, it's when they're building up and reaching maturity, heading toward maturity. That's
my wife didn't even believe it. I said, I'm sitting at the living room table, and I said, "Was that thunder?" And she looked at me and says, "No, it's the air conditioner condenser coming on."
She was,
and after about 2 or 3 minutes, all of a sudden,
Joe, admit it. She really wanted to go upstairs with the wrench and take the air conditioner apart to replace the compressor.
You were close. You're close at noontime, and at noontime normally I get ready to get ready to get my stuff together and come here to Fios 1 for my afternoon and evening of making weather, so to speak, or looking at the weather. And at noontime she comes in. She says, "I need help. You need to help me replace the fan in the exhaust fan in one of our bathrooms. It kept making this clunking sound or this annoying sound, which now all of a sudden, like when I'm normally on the road, I'm finding myself at the top of the ladder while she's underneath it with a screwdriver trying to get this."
I'd have just left. All right, so we've got we still got a little bit more work to do with downpours and thunderstorms. It's amazing for Long Island, by the way. When you look at some of the rainfall amounts that we've had over the last 2 weeks in northern New Jersey, in the Hudson Valley, and in Connecticut, and in and around New York City, some places getting half a foot, 3, maybe even as much as a foot of rain spread out over the last 2 weeks. I don't think that most places on Long Island have probably gotten less than an inch. Maybe a few places have gotten a bit more than that cumulative. And once again today, all the downpours, basically New Jersey, the Hudson Valley to about New York City, one clipped Nassau County, and that was it. Now we've got one more round of downpours to get through, and let's do the local stuff first, and then we'll go to Hurricane Hector, which is looking more and more like it's going to be headed for Hawaii, but we are actually seeing signs here that we're going to see improvement coming because of the fact that the back edge, that western edge of that wall of rain that's been up and down the eastern seaboard, is sliding eastward. That upper trough with that southerly flow is breaking down fairly rapidly. So we just have to get through that stuff that's sitting in southeast PA and in northeastern Virginia, because that's going to swing over us during tomorrow morning. You're already seeing some downpours coming into the Hudson Valley now. So we'll get through that, and then maybe some weather conditions could start to improve from west to east tomorrow afternoon.
We have had, and this is unofficial now, but at my house in Putnam Valley, during the month of July, we had roughly, and I have to say roughly now because we had to do some, we had to take the weather station that I have down. It's been out of commission for the last week or so. But up until that time, we already had like 8.5 inches of rain for the month of July. It was crazy. And we had more on top of that. So it's amazing the dichotomy, if I may use a $5 word here, between where I am, and I'm located about 50 miles north of Midtown Manhattan, between where I am versus places like Long Island, places out your way, that's been in almost like a semi-drought this past month.
And the soil moisture content is so high where you are, and in places inland, and not that far inland, you have to go to find this. Probably might impact the temperatures by a couple of degrees when we get into the hot weather Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, and this is the thing now. We're about to flip to a different scenario. It's not necessarily going to turn more comfortable here. I wish I could say that behind this system by midday and afternoon tomorrow. But the sun's going to come back out in full probably for Sunday, Monday, and maybe even Tuesday as well. And doesn't look like we're going to have much of a chance for any thunderstorm or shower activity Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. In fact, it could very well be dry every one of those 3 days. But the other side of the coin is, whereas we've had temperatures for the most part in the 80s the last several days with the high levels of humidity, now here comes temperatures at or above 90, maybe even in the mid-90s, and that's going to really make things very, very downright miserable, maybe,
I know.
for some.
Here's the NAM for tomorrow morning, and you got these the last of the showers. This is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's kind of taking its time getting them out of the way, and it might take a good chunk of the day, at least for parts of eastern New Jersey and Long Island. May take most of the afternoon to finally get the last of the showers out. And then Sunday and Monday, the NAM has nothing. You know, look, might there be a tiny isolated shower or thunderstorm that pops up someplace? I suppose that is possible. But in terms of the widespread kind of activity we've been seeing for like we've had this week, I'm saying no. And here's the next cold front, Joe. This comes through, you know, looks like it approaches late Tuesday. It might have some trouble getting through here. I think it might get hung up for a little bit. It may have to wait for another push to come down from the north. So we may have to wait till late in the week and into next weekend to get some dew point relief.
Yeah, and the models, the mid and long range models, the GFS and the European, have been going back and forth with this. In fact, case in point, the GFS, one run they would show a magnificently dry, fresh, clean air mass dropping on down from Canada. This would be for later this upcoming week. And then 12 hours later, it was like, oh, I didn't. Did you actually think we were going to get cooler? And they show like a trough that's flat, and they have a high pressure system that's building up like a balloon getting filled with helium, a huge upper level ridge of high pressure, which is a signal that it's not necessarily going to be all that dry and cool. It will be dry, but it may actually warm up to, you know.
I'll take warm and dry. I don't mind that too. I mean, that doesn't bother me too much.
One thing also I noticed that the Climate Prediction Center has been almost every single day this week looking at their 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks. They have painted the entire eastern third of the country with above normal precipitation. But yesterday, they took it away for the 8 to 14 day outlook. They had us in normal precipitation. And if you look at today's 8 to 14 day outlook, which starts on August the 8th, now they have below normal. So the trend is going to be later this week and into next weekend for drier conditions and hopefully less humid conditions as well.
All right, so we have Hurricane Hector in the Pacific. It's now crossed the 130 degrees west longitude threshold. It weakened a little bit overnight, and then this morning the weakening leveled off and it started strengthening again. And now we have a fairly well-defined eye. By the way, that's not an eastward motion. The latitude and longitude is the map is adjusting, so we could go out further west. So, but so it's not really, it's not moving east there on those last two frames. It's top winds are on the last advisory was 105, and I think it'll probably get to major hurricane status in the next 24 hours.
You mentioned the shift in the satellite view. And the shift is not only shifting in terms of the view, but also in terms of satellites themselves. The wonderful GOES-16 satellite, which has been providing us with magnificent images ever since it went officially operational a while back. This hurricane is right on the edge of the viewpoint of the GOES-16. So what you're seeing in the final few frames is actually from the GOES-15, which is the, I hate to say it, the old-fashioned methodology of imaging storms from 22,000 miles up. So hopefully one of these days we'll be able to replace that GOES-15 with something as nice as the GOES-16 that we're used to here in North America.
All right, these are the spaghetti plots, as we call them, all the hurricane tracking models, and you can see the Hawaiian Islands are there, and they're all visible. The models have been adjusting southward a little bit. What kind of struck me with this is that usually after about day 4, you start to see these lines going in all different directions. They're really all very, very tightly clustered together, and except for a couple of outliers, they all seem to take this just south of Hawaii. And I think we have to note this, just to go back real fast. The loop, this is a very small hurricane. It's only about 150 miles across. It's a little bit bigger than Beryl was, but it really is a very small system. So the eye could pass 100 miles south of the Big Island of Hawaii, and they may have nothing more than some patchy clouds, and a little bit of a slight breeze.
But their main problem probably will be the rough surf, and that'll make the surfers
assuming that this is going to hold. And the Hurricane Center's kind of following that in terms of their forecast. This would start having impact on Hawaii probably late Tuesday night, early Wednesday, if this is the position they have for 11 a.m. Wednesday. My usual experience, at least with storms up the East Coast, is that they usually tend to be a little slow toward the end of the period. But this is maybe a different animal because it's moving across the tropics. But Hawaii, the southern tip of Hawaii is at about 19.2, and the hurricane is forecast to pass about 2.5 degrees south of that. That's 150 nautical miles. It can do that, as I said, and they will probably not experience any kind of land impacts. You're right about the rough seas. But again, this is the forecast track. You can see the margin of error, and the models have been trending south because of the fact that there's a big upper high to the north that's kind of pressing it down. And here's the GFS ensembles also, Joe, very tightly clustered.
Very tight. No real scat. And as you said, there's a couple of the outliers. One taking it almost due north by earlier midweek next week. I should also point out, Joe, and there are a few people out there who they simply say, "Oh, Hawaii," and they don't really know the geography of Hawaii. The Big Island is not where Honolulu is, for example.
No,
it's where Oahu is, which is much further to the north and west of the Big Island, and even further away, or displaced from the projected path of the storm. So Hawaii may get Honolulu may get even less of an impact, as opposed to a place like Hilo, or in the southern end of the Big Island.
All of the intensity models have this at least a tropical storm. Notice that they all are kind of in a downtrend as we go out in time. So as it gets closer to Hawaii, the models do seem to indicate that there will be some kind of weakening. Seems like the consensus is somewhere in the Category 2 zone, borderline Category 3, mostly Category. Let me make sure I got this. Yeah, so Category 2, they all seem to be clustered inside the Category 2 area. There's a few up there in the Category 3, and there's a couple in the Category 1. But it looks like it wants to hold the intensity. And the other thing about this, Joe, the way it's looking right now, in terms of the track, let me just back it up, because it's just coming into view here. And there it goes. So it's kind of moving west, a little jog to the northwest, then a jog right here, jog back down to the almost west-southwest there. And it passes south of the islands. It maintains it. That's kind of unusual for something that's coming from the East Pacific, but it is maintaining it as hurricane strength, and then it keeps on going, crosses the international date line, and goes to the other side. So, and once it crosses the date line, it gets a whole different name.
So it does. I was just going to say that. So it gets its name shaped, just like, for example, an Atlantic Basin storm crossing through Central America. If it does manage to get into the Pacific Ocean, it will become.
Or on a couple of rare instances where we've had Pacific storms come in and the remnants have gone into the Gulf of Mexico and regenerated. It's happened a couple of times. They get a new name.
One storm I remember a long time ago, Joan. I forget what Joan became, or whether Joan was the name after the first. Anyway,
there have been a few that have gone the other. More go Atlantic to Pacific than Pacific to Atlantic.
Now, when it crosses over the international date line and receives a new name, does it go from being a hurricane to a typhoon?
I believe so. I think that's
it's the same storm, just a different.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's Japan's responsibility when it gets to the other side.
And that would be. I don't remember that ever happening, where a storm that is now currently under the jurisdiction of the National Hurricane Center in Miami, if it continues moving the way it is, sometime Sunday night or Monday they hand this off to Hawaii, the Pacific Hurricane Center, and then if it goes across the date line, I guess you're right. I guess they're going to.
No, it's happened a couple of times. I think the last time it happened, I think might have been I'm trying to rack my memory with this, and I didn't get a chance to look it up. Hurricane John in the Pacific, which I think is on record as being the longest living East Pacific storm. That I think that went across and went all the way across the date line to the other side. I'm going to do some research on that. And by the way, all of this is going to hinge on the upper air, of course. And there's that orange area that's north of Hawaii. That is a closed upper high, and the models have been strengthening that.
Right.
So the trough that's off the northeast in the Northeast Pacific can't get down to sort of pull it up. It tries to right here, and then that upper high builds and shoves it back down to the west-southwest, and then it just keeps on going because the ridge is just right up there to its north. And by the way, the European is very similar to the GFS, except that it actually is a little bit further to the south than the GFS. As you can see it here rolling along.
Well, it's a little dinky storm there.
Yeah, it's very small.
Yeah.
And it's actually, as I said, much further. It goes even further south, and it takes it out to the international date line, and it keeps on going.
And that upper high that you mentioned, as I mentioned yesterday, climatologically, July and probably into August too, there typically is a large subtropical Pacific high-pressure zone north and northeast of Hawaii, and that brings Hawaii the northeast trade winds, which usually mean nice weather. And in fact, now, if that high does indeed strengthen and kind of suppresses Hector just to the south, it'll do its trick, and the climatology will work out, and they will miss out, and they'll stay in a fair weather pattern.
Everybody's asking about how much longer for the humidity, Joe.
I'm hoping that the humidity is going to be going away finally for at least more than a day or two at the end of next weekend. There's going to be there's going to be two weather systems next week. One that's coming through on Wednesday, and will bring us the possibility for showers and storms which may linger into early Thursday, and then hopefully a stronger push of drier Canadian air, which will arrive here by week's end, by next Friday, which, if it has enough oomph to it, will push on through and allow for some drier and better weather for not this weekend, but next weekend. Those of a certain age, maybe you remember this too, Shell gasoline, back in the 60s or in the 70s, they used to do commercials where they would have giant signs, and they supposedly the Shell gas had something called platformate. Remember that term?
God,
and they'd show a car that would run out of gas. Here's the car without the platformate, and now they showed the car with platformate, which contained Shell oil, and it easily went past the car that lost it. Anyway, hopefully this dry air coming next Friday will have enough platformate in it to
push it up.
Push
All right, let's
up.
run through these questions real quick. Peter Benedetto, recent storms dying out before they hit the New Jersey shore. I think because the trough is too far to the west, the upper trough and the flow, unlike 2 weeks ago, this time around, I think that the trough has been is further west, so everything's been further inland. But you will get some of the downpours from this last swing that's coming eastward for late tonight and tomorrow. Vinny Dice Ruggiero, a well-known comedian, has a gig tomorrow night from 7 to 11 outdoors. I assume you're saying 7 to 11 tomorrow evening. You should be by that time. You should be okay.
7 to 11 in the morning, Joe, to do a.
Well, I don't know. You never know. Rainy summers and snowy winter in 15 seconds or less.
I see
Michael James Bear.
I don't see any correlation whatsoever. There's some years when we've had rainy summers and snowy winters, but there are other years that it didn't work out. It's tough to find any correlations between summer and winter, I think.
Renaissance Fair in Tuxedo, New York, for tomorrow's for opening day.
Oh my goodness, I've been to the Renaissance Fair, and some of the actors that portray people in the 15th and 16th century, the costumes they have to wear.
Right.
Oh.
And they're going to have bad hair.
Oh.
Underneath bad, what do they call those things that they wear on their heads?
I don't know, but to wear a costume either Saturday or Sunday, especially Sunday with the heat. I hope they make good money for doing that.
Buzz, you changed the barbecue to Sunday. I think that was a good move.
Yep.
Rocco Fridella, do you think think based on the trends of the last 2 weeks, will leave the East Coast exposed to this tropical stream right up the coast.
You know, we've been dealing with this now since the beginning of the summer. People saying that we're going to have a better chance of seeing tropical cyclones and hurricanes in the eastern part of the country because the water is so much warmer here versus the African coast or whatever. But we saw yesterday, Joe, the Atlantic is just like dead.
Yeah,
and it
remains so.
And the Arctic, the Sahara dust doesn't help matters any.
Daniel Kirby, who's Johnny Quest on my YouTube channel, who lives in Western Virginia, they've got some big problems now that have developed in Virginia. They've had so much rain that a lot of the dams are at capacity.
Right.
He did post that the Lynchburg. The dam in Lynchburg is stable right now, but there is a big. This rain needs to stop there, and they at least are going to get a break.
You know, one thing that you could hope for is you get so much rain in general during the summertime, and if you're not particularly a snow lover or one of who wants nor'easters, maybe you could hope that perhaps everything just wrings itself out by the wintertime, and we have a below normal snow season, but. Again, it doesn't always work out that way. You really don't know.
Well, we may be due for a subnormal snow season the way the winters have been all above normal. It's been absolutely. I think was it 7 out of the last 8 have been above normal. So you know what? Let's not even talk about winter now, even though it does make us feel cooler and better. Because we got to go. Top of the hour, FiOS 1 News, Long Island and New Jersey for me,
and FiOS 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley for me. And again, looks like at least half of your day tomorrow, or maybe a little more, will have more of the wet stuff, and then after that, get ready for a few days of dry and hot weather.
I agree.
Hace caliente.
Have a great weekend, folks. We'll see you on Monday.
Have a good one.